Welcome into the Fill in the Blanks podcast. Excuse me. I am Jarvis Davis. She is Tenitra Batiste. We are live here with you on the Fill in the Blanks podcast. Tenitra, how are you today?
Oh, good, good. Just trying to hang in there inside or really outside the perimeter. Today I'm OTP and oh my God, it's hot as all get out. But, just bracing ourselves for summer, right?
Right, bracing. It is summertime. I don't care what nobody
Yeah.
say because it is actually been ridiculously like depressingly. I'm gonna say depressingly hot, but I know that's not a word. But it's been depressingly hot as of late. That's for sure.
Yes. I'll go with you on that.
So, Tanisha, so it's been a lot that had gone down since we last have talked to you all, and we haven't had a
Yes.
chance to talk about it on the show. But Julio Jones no longer an Atlanta Falcon. He gets traded to the Tennessee Titans for a
Mm-hmm.
2022 second round pick, and they swap picks. Falcons gave up their sixth round pick in 2023, and they received
Mm-hmm.
the Titans 2023 fourth round pick. So a second and
Mm-hmm.
a fourth for an aging wide receiver, guy who had only played 9 games last year. What say you about the value that the Falcons got for them?
Yeah, I think that's a good value. I mean, and you offloaded the contract, so that's $15.1 million that the
Yes,
Falcons
that's the
don't have
key
to be
right
concerned
there.
about. That might be Jarvis. Yeah, that might be the biggest win on the Falcons side, just to get rid of that as they look to sign their draft class, if you will, their 2022-21 draft class. Also, when I look at the Antonio Brown deal, for example, that's kind of where I was leveraging. And Antonio's a little bit younger than Julio when he was traded away from the Steelers. But ultimately speaking, I figured if the Steelers couldn't get a first round pick for him, probably
Yeah,
wasn't going to happen for the Falcons to get a first rounder for Julio Jones. For them to get a second rounder and a fourth rounder, I think they walked away with the goods. But also, I think the Titans got a good deal that allows them to have one more strong receiver in their receiving core, just to at least give Tannehill a little bit more to work with, even though, let's face it, they're going to be relying on Derrick Henry to power that offense anyway.
no
So I
doubt.
mean, but
No doubt.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, I believe it works out well. And from just listening to GM John Robinson on the Titan side, it seems like this conversation was weeks in the making. This deal was weeks in the making. It was a good fit for both organizations in terms of what he had to share with what Terry Fontenot had to say. So I don't know about you, Jarvis. I know that for Falcons fans, it's a tough pill to swallow. But listen, the reality is business first. And it's interesting because I don't think you and I were shocked at any of the proceedings. I would say mildly surprised that he asked for a trade, but even that was a mild surprise, in my opinion. I think ultimately we saw this coming. We saw this writing on the wall. Even last season, we began to have questions about what
Bad time,
2021
yeah.
would look like. Yeah, without him.
And, and it's unfortunate that the way it ended. But a lot of
Yeah,
times when it comes to superstar wide receivers and teams making financial decisions to get rid of said players, like
yeah.
that, it never ends well. And be
No.
honest with you, it wasn't that nasty of an ending in
Yeah,
anyway. Because if you really
I
really
feel
take
the
a look at
same.
it, okay, he requested a trade, in back in March, and you didn't hear about it until he went on, whether he knew it or not. He said that,
Hmm.
I'm out of there when it came to
Right.
becoming a plan for the Falcons ever again. So when that tells you that the organization didn't want to put him out there like that, they respected him
Exactly.
by not having that stuff, quote unquote, leak out. And like I said, you
Yes.
only heard it.
Yes.
You only heard it when he came out and said something publicly about it. And now, granted,
Yes.
he probably didn't. I still believe that he kind of knew what the situation was with
Same.
Undisputed and Shannon Sharp. It's just hard for me to
Same.
believe that he had no idea what was going down. So
Yeah.
him putting that out there is one of the reasons why I believe that we even found out that he had requested a trade. So I think that both organizations probably are going to get some good value from this. Now,
Yes.
it's a matter of whether or not Julio Jones is going to be able to stay healthy. And on the Titans end, they actually restructured Ryan Tannehill's contract in order for it to make room for Julio Jones. And I think that people are going to Ryan Tannehill, it's funny that he made he really didn't have a choice, but he still is the guy that not only financially but on the field too. He's going to be the guy that make this work. Now, I'm glad you mentioned Derrick Henry, because Derrick Henry is going to be the catalyst on whether or not how Julio Jones is productive. How does that work, Jarvis?
Yes.
I say that because a lot of teams are going to pay a lot of attention to Derrick Henry, right? They know that that's going to have to be the number one on their agenda on Sundays is stop Derrick Henry. And a lot of times that requires 8 men in the box. Now, you have A.J. Brown and Julio Jones on the outside. So you have to pick your poison. And you saw this last year with the Falcons and how a lot of teams attacked them. And there were times that Calvin Ridley was actually getting the double, and Julio Jones was getting their best corner.
Single coverage,
their best corner was locking him one-on-one, and Calvin Ridley was getting the double. So, and I think it's going to probably be the exact opposite at times this year with the Titans. So it's going to be very interesting to see how teams play them. Like I said, but I started chuckling a little bit when I saw the report of him restructuring his contract. I was like, he gonna have to do a lot more than open up some that wallet and kind of move some money around in order for this thing to work.
Yeah, and just before we move on, I thought about two other things I wanted to say. Number one, you really said the word when you said this really was about as amicable a divorce as you can expect to have.
Right.
You think about this. I read a report that talked about
they didn't even argue over the kids, T.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, or how the money gets split, or who gets the property, or anything. Yeah. I mean, this is pretty darn amicable for all intents and purposes. Right. And I thought about an article I read that said, Julio had been discontented for a minute with the direction of the organization and really did not like the fact that they just chose to fire Dan Quinn because he had a good relationship with DQ. And here's what I thought about that as well. Assuming that report is accurate, I give him so much credit. And I think people are missing that point, that if he was disgruntled for all of last season and it really just kind of took, it kind of apexed when DQ was fired, you and I never saw it. The media never saw it. He definitely was still as professional as ever. And in terms of so I wanted to say that as well. So the people, to me, you don't go in on the Falcons and you don't go in on Julio for how either of them handled this. I felt like both of them, all things considered, handled the situation extremely well. And then I think the other thing is the Titans will get a very well-rested Julio because, yes, he was out for those last 7 games, but I don't think he was necessarily out the last 7 because that hamstring or that turf toe or just whatever the case may be, all of the injuries were just bothering him that much. I do believe for a couple of games he was out, but I do also I always felt like some of those games he was out because, well, you're not going anywhere. You're not winning anything. Why trot him out there to potentially get him injured when there's nothing that you're playing for in terms of like playoff positioning and that sort of thing? So I just, I
wholeheartedly believe that it's going to be very interesting to see how this deal plays out, because I know the Falcons got a lot of good value. And it's not because I'm not even talking about a 2nd round pick. I'm talking about getting enough money to be able to sign the 2021 draft class. That's the most important thing now. So
to me, that was a sigh of relief. Yep.
Right, exactly. So another sigh of relief was, I don't know about you, but on Sunday around 3:20 or so, last
Lord
5
Jesus
of the doggone Hawks 76ers matchup up in Philadelphia. I don't know about you, but my heart kind of skipped a couple beats, T.
It was too much.
Back at it tonight. 7:30. Seemed like they almost tinkled that game away, but they were able to pull it out, thankfully. And
Yeah,
Trae Young
yeah,
is just continuing to help people realize that he can actually play basketball.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was a tough. I'd say from the 3 minute and 55 second mark, because that's when one of my friends called me and she refused. She couldn't watch it on air on TV because she was driving from Ellenwood to Alpharetta and refused to listen to Steve Holman, wanted me to do play by play because I
Right.
guess she wanted somebody to hold her hand
Follow
the
up on your
entire
skills,
last
right?
3 minutes and 55 seconds. Yeah, and she's a season ticket holder, so this was real for her. But yeah, it was exciting to see them close the game out, but it was painful to watch as well because it was almost like Philly had 7 or 8 players on the court at one time. It just
Yeah.
felt like they were just trapping from everywhere. I mean, you couldn't get an inbound, you couldn't get past the half court. It was tough to
Barely
watch,
can get
and
the
that's
ball off the
something that,
baseline. Like, good
yeah,
Lord.
like literally. I mean, it was
Yeah.
painful to watch. But shout out to my X Factor, Kevin Herter, because Lil Scrappy did his thing in those waning minutes, and Bogdan Bogdanovic, even though he ended the night with 5 of 12 on threes, he was still looking like he was struggling from three for a minute until that very moment. So I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned that, Jarvis, because a couple players that I need to see really step up their game early and then be consistent throughout. Kevin Herter, no doubt, again, came off the bench, start to finish, doing his thing. Wouldn't be shocked if he actually got that starting opportunity today at the three, because let's just say Solomon Hill, good to have that body banging on the inside and sometimes going out to the wing. But it'll be interesting to see what Nate McMillan does in the way of adjustments, maybe to his starting lineup. Don't know where we stand as far as DeAndre Hunter. I know he was listed as probable, and
Mm-hmm.
he did practice yesterday, so he could be a go, but still would be on a minutes restriction, right? So you got to think of that. And then I think the Hawks have to definitely account for Ben Simmons, who took on Trae in that second half of game one, who was asked to guard him the rest of the series. And how are you going to manage through when Ben Simmons is guarding him, or when they bring help for Trae?
Yeah, and that's going to be the big key right there, because when you think about how they started off guarding Trey in game one, one would have to assume that they're not going back there, going back down that
Yes,
road,
right,
because that obviously did not work. So
right.
and I think that's going to be the thing about. That's one thing I love about these 7 game series, that like they're like
Mm-hmm.
little mini series within each other and within each game, because each
Yes.
game is different. And I'm interested to see the type of adjustments that Doc Rivers is going to make. Uh,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I want to see how the type of adjustments that Nick McMillan is going to be able to make, because having your guys being trapped like that, and just being looking like they
Yeah.
don't know what to do and just
Yeah.
lost out there. And of course they were able to figure it out and get to a
Mm-hmm.
point where they were able to make some big shots. You had the big shot by Bo. And I know I like to
Mm-hmm.
call him Bo. It was a slight at first, but it's definitely it's a love nickname right now. Like I'm messing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna continue to call him Bo. Bo the Sniper. That's his nickname, and he making that big
No
shot and
question.
shushing the crowd. Like, you just like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is what I like to
Yeah.
see, and I also like to see what I saw. I'll continue to say this.
Mm-hmm.
If I call a player out and I tell her how I really feel about said player, talking about John Collins,
John
I am
Collins.
going
I
to give
knew
him
I knew
his
you were going
credit.
there.
I have
Yes.
to give
Yeah.
him his credit, because
Absolutely. Yes.
I like what I saw in the last few games, and in the closeout game from John Collins against the Knicks. I said he's going to have to step up his
Yes.
game a little bit more, and we saw that. I'm talking about
Mm-hmm.
whether it be from making those big shots from the free throw line, catching the big alley,
Yes.
and putting his man parts on
Yeah.
Joel Embiid's head, like all
No
of that.
question.
He
Yeah. All of it.
continue to see
All of
that,
it.
and hitting his open 3-point shots as well. That was
Yes.
huge.
Yes.
That was so
Yes.
huge. When John Collins is on, this team is very hard to beat, and I will continue
It
to say
is.
that throughout the playoffs.
It is. Yes, it
So
is. It is. And you need him because Clint Capella in the last 5 years really did own Joel Embiid. And
right,
we didn't really see that. I mean, he stood his own, but 10 points, 10 rebounds, kind of need a little bit more from Clint. But if you're getting what you got from John, then it balances out. it balances
Right.
out. You know, the other thing I wanted to say was it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure Joel Embiid will be a go, but how far will he be able to go? Because he was hobbling in the
Right.
last couple minutes of that game one. And that was a lot of minutes. I believe he played 38 minutes, 39 points. So it'll be interesting to see how his body reacts for game two. Also, you can't necessarily account for him until he's in the game because I mean he's a streaky shooter just like everybody else. But if they're gonna throw Seth Curry out there and he's gonna start making 4 and 5 threes, the Hawks bench has to have an answer for that. So hopefully we'll
Indeed.
get some of that from Lou Will, Danilo Gallinari. Need to see a little bit more than 9 points from him. So the good thing, Jarvis, I think, is that as good of a first half as the Hawks played in game one was as good of a, I'm going to not call it a full first half. I'm going to call it a 1.5 quarters, 1 3/4 quarters by the Sixers. But 2.5 quarters was enough for the Hawks to win. And still it was not 4 solid quarters. So if they give us even 3 quarters, full solid 3 quarters, all the way across, everybody who suits up, I still give them every good chance to come back home 2-0.
Yeah, and I'm with you, and I'm with you on that. And I think that I look at this game as a part of it as a game that the 76ers really feel like they lost out on the game one. They really they really believed that they should have ended up winning that game. It's kind of delirious when you get blown out by 20 points at half, and basically sustain that until maybe about midway through the fourth quarter. I really believe that they're going to be chomping at the bit to try to get this game, which is what they should. Yes. They should win this game tonight. I'll go as far to say that. So, but tonight though, I think it's something that this Hawks team has been tested. They've been tested and they've passed tests every time. Every time to see what they're going to do in this particular situation because they're going to make adjustments.
Yes.
And you know that you've made adjustments, and I really want to see how those adjustments are going to play out because if DeAndre Hunter isn't playing again, that would be truly unfortunate. But you can see that this team can still get it done because they are just so deep. And I was even having a conversation the other day. I asked, talking to Sean, I ball said 9-2-9 the game, and I was just like, are the Hawks? I knew the answer to this question, but I like to ask people questions. I was like, are the Hawks the deepest team in the East? Not the most talented team. Are they the deepest team in the East? And my answer to that question is yes, hands down. But of course, you got top heavy teams like the Brooklyn Nets, and then you got the Bucks, who are pretty deep, but they lost DiVincenzo, the big time guy coming off the bench. But I think that Hawks are hands down the deepest team in the East, and I think it's all going to boil down to whether or not the 76ers have enough scoring. Because like you said, the Hawks aren't going to miss shots all game if they're off, and with game one showed us that hey, if they get super hot, it can get really ugly really quickly.
Real quick. Yeah, exactly. And then you just need that depth to show up. That depth, if that depth shows up more so than it did on Sunday, it's gonna be a long game, and we already know it's gonna be a long series. That's, if nothing else, that's what game one showed you. If in case you thought this was somehow gonna be a 5-game series or something to that effect in the Sixers' favor, I believe game one showed you otherwise.
And tonight, 7:30 is the tip. And just want to mention one quick nugget before we get out of here. The Braves taking on the Phillies. They won a series against the Dodgers. That's the World Series champion. They won 2 out of 3. First pitch tonight is at 7:05 with Drew Smiley and Aaron Nola. And hey, Drew Smiley has been,
a little hit or miss.
It's been a little hit or miss, which is is the Braves team as a whole. You know, it's nothing else that we haven't seen before. So hopefully
Mm-hmm.
they'll be able to get on a 3-game winning streak and try to get that thing finished out up in Philadelphia with the other home team in Philadelphia.
Yeah, agreed. And it's funny because I'm thinking, okay, this could go anyway. We could be talking about the Atlanta teams taking 2 in Philly tonight, taking 1, or taking. No, we hope it at a minimum one of those games will go in favor of
Well,
an
somebody
Atlanta
get a
team.
win.
But yeah, right. Finally, with trepidation, I say momentum when it comes to the Braves, but I do give them a lot of credit for bouncing back from game 1 in that Dodgers series. To
Right.
take both of them when you go up against a Clayton Kershaw and a Trevor Bauer, and for your pitchers to stand firm, and for your bullpen to help you to get the win, and for your bats to do just enough of what they needed to do. So yeah, maybe this will be it, because you got a tough a tough June ahead of you before All-Star in July. So yeah, if you can take any of that momentum and any encouragement from what you saw with the Dodgers, hopefully they can sneak a couple games, if not this entire series in Philly, and also just kind of get themselves reset on proper footing in the division.
Most definitely. We would definitely be able to see that, and we will be able to talk about that next week when you come to the
Yes.
Fill in the Blanks podcast. We had a very special early edition of the Fill in the Blanks podcast. We thank you for joining us. Always remember, you can subscribe, hit that subscribe button on our YouTube page, and you can check us out on most, if not all, of the podcast platforms. If you get confused and you can't find it, check out anchor.fm. You can find everything you need right there. And T, go ahead and hit them with that benediction, please, so we can get out of here.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I want you guys to take away is you got to be flexible, and you got to move when life moves you. And Jarvis and I are the poster children for that for the last week and a half, how
Right.
things come at you from left field, right field, center field. But just be flexible and be patient to see where you're led to go, and just flow with it. Just flow with it. That's the best thing to do. Whatever life hits you with, keep it moving.
Keep it moving. And hashtag we move. Hashtag true to Atlanta on the FIDB podcast. We'll see y'all next week.
See ya.